Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're enjoying your day so far, and today we're going to talk about the SMGs not being viable in Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. A number of SMG players pretty frustrated these past few days, the fact that the MP5, the AK-74U, really cannot compete in most situations with the AK-47 or the Krig in the current iteration of the game. Supposedly there are some balancing and some weapon tuning updates coming relatively soon to Black Ops Cold War, but will that be enough to overhaul what, well, it can be seen right now as AR dominance in the current title, which certainly favours some teams more than others. Intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you are new. As always, I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much for doing that. And as Bids then says yesterday, 74U MP5, what's the better piece right now? And Gorgo Knight says, look, I just saw you run the gung-ho AK-47 iron sight laser. I'd call it a day, best SMG in the game. And well, a lot of pro teams saying that the AK-47 is very good. A lot of the European amateurs ban that out of play. But, you know, on the North American side, for example, Atlanta FaZe, who seem to have been dominating scrims these last few days, pretty much all they've been using is the Krig. But a couple of clips to show you guys here in a second. Kenny also said this a while ago, because of course when the game first came out, we had this MP5 FFAR meta, which people kind of liked, it seemed. I don't know, they nerfed the FFAR into the ground, of course, and reduced the MP5's range somewhat, and maybe added a little bit more recoil as well, so it's a little bit more difficult to use. And as Kenny says, look, I feel like the headshot multiplier should have been fixed first before rushing to nerf guns, just to see how that meta would have played out without it, right? But they do nerf the MP5, and it kind of felt to me at the time when they nerfed it, like, are they just doing this because yeah, it's the most used weapon in public matches? Probably just because it's the first one you unlock, right, in terms of SMGs. That's, you know, unfortunately it felt like that maybe played into it somewhat, but who really knows? The MP5 did get nerfed to some degree, and now a lot of people are saying it's not really viable in competitive play. And as Envoy was saying just a second here, the only map that he really uses it on is on Crossroads, Strike, Hardpoint, and all the other maps he's using an AK-74U, and sometimes even on Moscow, it's just a 4AR fest, right? And it's interesting to hear Scump, as we're looking in this clip in a second here, say that like he would like to run an SMG, but right now it's just not viable, right? An Envoy can happily run that, and well, Scump has used the AR in the past. I mean, you look back to Call of Duty Black Ops 1, which this game does resemble to some great degree. He was using the FAMAS to great effects, because well, the FAMAS was the dominant weapon in that game. This time they nerfed the FFAR. Will it make a comeback though in coming days? Who really knows what's going to happen? And the Dallas Empire tweeting this out, of course, the MP5 setup that Shotzi's using, but how much is he really using it, given that nowadays it seems to have moved certainly towards a Krig AK-74U meta on most maps, with the Krig really being the dominant weapon in the entire game, and SMGs not being as viable as I think we would like them to be, because in my opinion the ideal meta is something like a 2 SMG 2 AR, or 2 SMG 1 flex weapon, 1 main assault rifle, or 3 SMG 1 assault rifle, that type of thing. I think that in the very worst case scenario it should be like 2-2, and then maybe in Search and Destroy you have 3 assault rifles in certain situations when you feel like that makes the most sense. But I don't really think the game plays best when the ARs are so dominant as they are right now, because it means that your SMGs are just like flooding themselves into a head glitch and have a very difficult time actually competing and doing anything at all with some of these weapons right now. And well, they're certainly going to struggle, I think, on the scoreboard this year. And with this new gentleman's agreement that we talked about, we'll go into discuss later today a little bit more as well. The fact that this smoke grenade, apparently only your assault rifle is able to use it, so even if you're an SMG, you're even at more of a disadvantage because you can't drop a smoke at your feet and well, hit a hill. But yeah, I'll share a couple of clips here from what Envoy has to say on the matter and what he feels about the current meta in the game, and also, well, the fact that the SMGs just aren't viable, and Scum would really like to run one if he could.
Starting off though, I mean, let's talk about the meta for the current game. The meta's kind of weird. I mean, not really weird, but we're looking at 2 subs, 2 ARs for some maps, which is super ideal. In other maps, you could really get away with running 3 ARs, sometimes 4, especially on maps like Moscow. You know, I'm like the main sub for OpTic this year. I like giving Seth the free reign of, you know, using the AR. We even saw him last year in MW take out the AR sometimes. So I can always trust him with that. But for me, I've been liking the 74U. It can compete with ARs pretty much at medium range, so it's been my weapon of choice, especially over the MP5. The MP5 I really only rock on Crossroads Hardpoint. But yeah, like I was saying, I mean, Moscow, the Krig is absolutely disgusting, so even sometimes I'll put it on there. There's a lot of head glitches and everything. Honestly, that's... I just like using it because it gets me more kills consistently. 7-4U, like, if I run into an AR at range, it's just so hard, so hard.
And man, the subs are not viable in this game.
No?
Really at
The
all.
74U 74 u is. Yeah. It actually is.
Yeah.
actually is.
The
It
same-
actually is.
That's my favorite
ARs,
one.
though?
People
on certain maps.
people running
on
3-4.
certain maps, yeah, certain maps it's like 3-3 and then 1 sub on each team.
We played Minnesota. They were running 4 AKs on Moscow.
We haven't played Minnesota yet.
Obviously, with the meta being the way that it is, right now as it stands, there's 3 ARs and 1 sub. Right?
Yeah, on some maps. Other maps are 2 and 2.
2 and 2. I mean, is that not the preferred meta? The 2 and 2?
I'd like to use a sub.
Is it true that Treyarch banned Semtex?
So as Attached says a few days ago, the 74U is the best SMG in Cold War. Pretty interesting to see, given the fact that, well, it was certainly the best SMG, the best weapon in the entire game in the alpha release of the game. Then the MP5 really kind of came into its own, and the Uzi as well, the Milano in the beta. No one really uses that anymore, and now the 74U does seem to be the weapon which is coming back into the meta. Interestingly, as well, the AK-47 kind of comes out of the meta, with people tend to realizing that the Krig seems to be the way to go right now. But even as Attached says right here, like, it's still not particularly viable, right? As Envoy is saying, you can certainly use it in certain situations, and on most maps, your primary SMG player, of course, is going to be using it. But the fact that the 74U, in essence, it almost feels like what a flex gun could be, right? You can definitely see a different world where the meta is like 2 MP5s, the AK-74U is almost your flex, and then your Krig is your main assault rifle type of thing, because it's that kind of weapon. And just the fact that the 74U is the main SMG in the game does show, in my opinion, why the ARs are so dominant in this game, that a gun like the 74U, which is basically like an assault rifle in a number of aspects, ends up being the best SMG in the game. So, if you were Treyarch, what would you do about this situation, right? Because you've got the Krig, you've got the FFAR that you've nerfed, you've got the AK-47, which is sitting there being very viable as well, you've got the Krig, which is also very viable. Those are the 2 assault rifles that most professional players have been using, and, well, some of the players, as we looked at, have been getting somewhat frustrated by. So, okay, the FFAR's been nerfed into the ground. Do you try and bring that back to a degree? The problem is, if you bring that back, you make SMGs even less viable. Do the SMGs need a buff? Do they just get buffed across the board somehow? Like, do they all become hit scans like they were in Black Ops 4? That might take them up to a degree, but I'm not really sure they want to do that, given some of the attachments are related to bullet velocity, and probably not a direction they're going to go in this time around. So what else do you do, right? Do you nerf all the assault rifles, which yeah, seems like something they don't particularly want to do? I mean, I always feel like sometimes these developers of some of these games like tend to be assault rifle players, and I think in Treyarch games we've seen it a fair bit where the ARs tend to be a little bit more dominant. I don't think it makes the game have the perfect meta, in my opinion. I think there's certainly some steps to be taken here to maybe make the ARs slightly worse or the SMGs more viable. Personally, I would prefer just to have the SMGs being more viable as a category. Like, I think my ideal solution probably would be to make them hit scan and maybe bump up the fire rate just somewhat, and also maybe increase the handling to some degree, because you know, to make them a little bit more viable against the assault rifles in some of the engagements, because sometimes it does feel like if you've got a 74U, if you've got an MP5, you're getting absolutely smoked by a Krig most situations, because it's just going to four-shot you from a decent range out, and the AK-47 is certainly in a similar camp. So intrigued to hear what your thoughts on, you know, exactly what you would do with these weapons. And as Octane says, no, the AK-47 is the best SMG in Cold War. It's very hard hitting up close. AK-47 or Krig, which side are you on? Octane agrees with the Krig, and well, certainly I think it fits his playstyle better in that sense, that it's like a super accurate ICR type weapon like we had in Call of Duty Black Ops 4. To finish out the video, I wanted to talk about a couple of things that has frustrated a number of the players these last couple of weeks. I think Parasite made some interesting points in this one regarding how like respawn and how gunfights are working. This came out like 10 days or so ago now, but he's talking at quite some length about the strafe speed in the game and why that makes the ARs, well, it makes gunfights somewhat difficult in the game. The fact that if you're on a head glitch, for example, and well, someone else is on a head glitch in a game like Black Ops 2, you could strafe really quickly with your stock on your weapon, and it meant that you could kind of challenge that guy without risking just like losing the gunfights. And what he's basically arguing here is that it's very difficult to actually take any gunfights in this game, because if someone's posted up on a head glitch, there really isn't too much you can do to challenge them. You can't like strafe out particularly quickly because your gun strafes very slowly indeed. And well, to be honest, slide cancelling does kind of work, and I saw Shotzi do a ridiculous movement the other day where he kind of goes prone, and then like as soon as he stands up, then he slides, and well, then he does the slide cancel, and it makes you slide cancel way quicker than you normally would. Maybe I'll make a video about that entire thing tomorrow, because I thought it was pretty remarkable. Hadn't seen anything like this before, and a number of things in that video he made were pretty spectacular. But as Parasite says, look, these are some of the issues in the game right now, and maybe that does affect the assault rifle balancing to some degree. And the other side of this, I suppose, is what the maps are doing right now. We haven't had too much discussion about the maps the last few days, and I believe that when Season 1 does drop, we should be in for a pretty good time with the maps they are introducing into the game for the competitive side. Definitely looking forward to that, because the maps in the game right now, like, it's not actually the end of the world. Like, I've certainly grown to actually like some of them, but it's still not maybe an ideal case scenario. As Slasher says a while ago to Killer here, like, you know, let's just give Garrison some time time to see how it does play out. But certainly you could look at some of these maps and say that the maps are designed in such a way that, you know, the MP5 and the AK-74U aren't necessarily too viable. Like a lot of them, the likes of Miami and Moscow, for example, a lot of the line of sights are relatively long, definitely makes it more difficult to actually run an SMG on a number of these maps. And so, well, as Envoy was saying, Crossroads seems to be the one where you can use an MP5 and get away with it. And maybe these new maps they do introduce to the game actually play out in a way that the SMGs do become more viable. So it might not necessarily be just a thing about buffing the SMGs or nerfing the assault rifles, but also if the maps are more viable to use SMGs on and have more close range engagements and you know, play in such a way and the hills are located and designed in such a way that maybe one guy sliding in with the MP5 and one guy following up with the 74U with 2 quigs behind does make more sense on that map, then maybe that's a direction that we can take as well to make this meta look a little bit better than it does at the current time. But I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, I'd greatly appreciate a like on the video. Really helps out the YouTube algorithm know you enjoyed this content. Other people like you may enjoy this content as well and help grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you for watching as always, take care, and I will see you next time.